Hello, I'm Frost, and welcome to my top 10 beginner tips for XCOM Chimera Squad. Tip number 1, include Terminal in your squad. No matter who you choose, make sure the Terminal is there as she is your healer. She can heal 4 hit points to any one of your squad members per turn, and it only takes 1 action point, and it doesn't matter where they are on the grid, as she uses her gremlin, her little drone, to do that. She can also heal herself. On top of that, if one of your units is unconscious, she can also stabilize them with the gremlin, so you don't have to run a unit over there in order to do it. This also only takes 1 action point, whether it's the healing or the stabilize, which means you can then use her to do, let's say, Overwatch afterwards, as she's pretty handy with a weapon. Then on the breach, she has a hack door ability, so she can go through locked doors at the breach point. And she also has this ability at breach called refresh, which is if you've got a multi-room encounter, she can actually heal your units at the breach stage for 2 HP. Tip number 2 is try to make sure that you can obtain 4 medikits before you get your 5th squad member. The reason why is once that new squad member arrives, you'll be able to train up one of your squad members, and that person should be terminal, so you can get her hit points up as quickly as possible. And obviously, while she's absent, you want to make sure that every single one of your units has a medikit so they can heal during the 2 turns that it's going to take to train up terminal. Tip number 3 is make sure that you have a balanced squad when going into combat. And normally that would be 2 attack units, 1 tackle unit, and 1 support unit. In my particular case, because I like ranged units, my dream team is Godmother with a shotgun who does loads of damage, Youngblood with a pistol who's got great aim. My support unit would then be Verge or Torque, as both of them can pin down units or cause additional issues for those enemy units. And finally, Terminal to provide the healing, because Terminal should always be in your squad. Tip number 4 is make use of grenades. Grenades are a utility item, and if Terminal is in your squad, then you can throw out those medikits and use grenades instead. The great thing with grenades is they do not use any action points, which means you can throw them into play at the beginning of the turn and you still have your 2 action points. My favorite grenade of all is the ceasefire grenade, as what this does is whatever area of effect it applies to, any enemies within that area will be unable to fire. So it's great for throwing towards an enemy that's about to take its turn and is probably going to fire on one of your squad members who's not under good cover. And that is a great way to protect them. Also, you have a smoke bomb, which then you can put your units into, and your enemies will then have great difficulty in being able to aim at you correctly. And you've also got shrapnels and flashbang and other bombs. So take your pick, but I highly recommend the ceasefire grenade. Tip number 5 is provide your units with an autoloader before you provide them with an expanded magazine. The reason why is the autoloader turns a reload from 1 action point to a free action. So you can still use your 2 action points after doing a reload. Generally, you only need to reload once, especially in early game. You only need to reload once during a skirmish encounter. Whilst the expanded magazine only increases your clip size by 1. So essentially it delays your need to reload by 1 turn. So you still have to use that 1 action point. So you're better off using the autoloader, and on top of that, the expanded magazine costs 55, the autoloader costs 40, so you save some credits as well. Tip number 5 is don't forget your equipment putbacks. What I mean by that is if you're going to load out, if you've just assigned a new unit to your APC and removed another unit, make sure you click on Make Items Available at the bottom. So you can see at the moment that I don't have any available items for Torque, who has just taken over from Youngblood on my units. So if I make the items available, it will strip off all of the equipment from my units that are not on the APC, and then I now have the ability to install those mods. That way you make sure that your units are as well equipped as possible before going into battle. Tip number 7 is that scars are not always your priority for training. For example, in this particular instance, Godmother has got a crit chance scar. Now, because Godmother is an attack unit, it does make sense to fix that scar. But if, for example, you had someone like Talk or Verge who are support units, and we had the same crit chance scar, we would probably leave it in favor of training up basic conditioning, which would increase HP by 2. And that's going to affect that unit all the way until endgame. And as they use their abilities more than their ability to fire, that takes high priority. So prioritize correctly when you're training. Tip number 8 is early game, make sure you acquire as much intel as possible so that you can deploy as many field teams as possible. Field teams allow you to keep the level of unrest in all of your city under control, which then reduces the amount of city anarchy that builds up during the game, which could then cause you problems towards endgame. Now, the way you deploy a field team is you pick up one of these boxes here that is empty, you pick an area preferably that's already got some unrest in it, and then by clicking on it you can then apply the field team, and as you can see they require different levels of intelligence amounts. On top of that, do not forget, skip through that, there we go, do not forget to apply your field team abilities. These unlock at different levels of the game, but for example vigilance reduces district unrest, and I can apply it to Renova Heights where I can't actually do a mission for 6 days, and that would go into a high level of unrest, and I can apply vigilance to that, and that will take effect next turn. Tip number 9 is breach order really matters. So in this case, there are 4 points of entry. There's the side window, the main door, the other main door, and then the second side window. And you can see they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is the order in which your units are going to attack. And then if there are multiple boxes for the entry, so in other words, the main door can have 4 different units go through there, then the order is from left to right. The reason why this order is important is because ideally you want to stagger your units, so that your first unit to go in is an attack unit, your second unit would be a support unit. This way your first unit will do the most damage on an opponent, and then you're not wasting a high damage attack unit on killing that opponent when it may only need just a couple of more hit points to take them out. So it's better to stagger your units. So for example, if I took Godmother and popped her in through this side window, she would be the first person to fire. Then let's say I took Patchwork. Patchwork would then be the second to fire. Then I would use Blue Blood, which is an attack unit, and make sure I throw the smoke bomb. So I make sure I throw use that ability, and then I put in Terminal. Now you'd think there I am sorted, but I am not, because the first unit to go through an entry point cannot use any of their abilities because they need to break down the door. So in this case, for example, Patchwork is breaking down the door. Now if I remove Patchwork from here, remove, there we go, and I pop in Terminal instead, and then I use Blue Blood, throw my smoke bomb, just throw my smoke bomb, please, there we go, and now I apply Patchwork. You can see I've got my combat scanners, which means that I can apply holo targeting to all of the enemies, and if Patchwork had gone in first, I would not have been able to use that ability. So the order is really important, not only for the rate of fire and who you're firing at, but also so that you can make best use of all your breach abilities. Tip number 10 is pick your targets carefully when you're doing the breach, and that doesn't necessarily mean just picking the first target that is offered to you. So in this case, okay, we have Godmother and she has a 100% chance of taking out the target, so we will. So we're going to do a breach fire there, and we'll take the obvious target. Now we're moving on, and we've got an adder which we can take out in one shot. You can see also from my tip 9 that we've got a support unit shooting here, so that's fine. So there we go. And now we have this Python up here, which is going to be taken care of by Blue Blood. And now we move on to our final unit, and in this particular case it's picked the right unit. Sometimes you will find that it will go for another unit, for example, that it think they can finish off in one shot. Now maybe this is the most important one, so it wasn't the first shot that was picked here, but there's 2 hit points on this one. It makes more sense for me to go for this one as it has more hit points to remove. So that way, in case I get a missed shot and I only do a graze, I'm more likely to take out the other unit, and so therefore this one will take my priority. So make sure you prioritize and don't pick the obvious one on the breach. Okay, so that wraps up my top 10 tips for Chimera Squad. I hope you found them useful. If you think there's a tip that's really important that I've forgotten about, then please put it in the comments. And if you liked what I do, then please give me a like. Please subscribe if you want more on sci-fi gaming, as I do release regularly, and hit that bell icon to get the notifications. All right, that's all for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.